Get ready to hear the truth about America on a show that's not immune to the facts with your host, Dan Bongino.
This is the most explosive interview show we've done yet. I am not kidding. I am not overselling this. So we've had 3 guests on the show. It's the first time we've done that. I've got former Mayor Rudy Giuliani about the Hunter Biden thing. I've got Robert Cahaly from the Trafalgar Polling Group and Steve Cortes from the Trump campaign. Folks, just a quick preview of what you're going to see on this show. First, Robert Cahaly just blew my mind. Some of the stuff he's talking about state polling, the national polling. Let me just leave it at this. Don't believe anything you've heard about this election until you've listened to Mr. Cahaly first from this Trafalgar group that nailed the polling in 2016 when everybody else screwed it up. Second, we have former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He brings up something about the Chinese government and what they were really up to with the Bidens that I have to tell you, I had to stop and ask him twice. Paul, am I kidding? I had to have him say it again. I missed it. It's stunning what they were really buying in Hunter. Blackmail material. Oh, you got to listen to that. And finally, Steve Cortes closing out the game out of the bullpen from the Trump campaign, absolutely hammering in about a 15-minute interview we did exactly what the Trump campaign is going to do, why they're going to win, and how the get out the vote is going. I am really proud of this show, ladies and gentlemen. We have some sponsors who paid for it. They're happy to be here. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. First sponsor today, Helix Sleep. Helix Sleep makes personalized mattresses right here in America and ships straight to your door with free no-contact delivery, free returns, and a 100-night sleep trial. To choose a mattress, Helix made a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete, matches your body type and sleep preferences to a mattress for you. Why didn't someone think of this sooner? Don't get a mattress for someone else. They customize a mattress for you. It depends. You like a mattress that's soft? What about firm? You sleep on your side like me, your back, your stomach, you sleep hot? With Helix, there's a specific mattress for each and everybody's unique taste, not for someone else. I took the quiz. I was matched to my favorite, the Midnight Lux Helix mattress. It's absolutely fantastic. My daughter has one too. We love it. Had a friend over. Couldn't rave more about it. I love Helix, but you don't need to take my word for it. Helix was awarded the #1 best overall mattress pick of 2020 by GQ, Wired Magazine, Apartment Therapy. Just go to helixsleep.com/Dan. Take their 2-minute sleep quiz. They'll match you to a customized mattress that'll give you the best sleep of your life. Right now, Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders for our listeners. Go today to helixsleep.com/Dan for up to $200 off your mattress order. Helix also offers exclusive discounts for our military, first responders, teachers, and students. That's really nice of you guys. Check out their website for more information, helixsleep.com/Dan. All right, now Robert Cahaly of the Trafalgar Polling Group. Don't believe anything you've heard about the 2020 election until you listen to this man. This is just great. Check this out. All right, I'm really excited to welcome Robert Cahaly, chief pollster at the Trafalgar Group, one of the few polling outfits that really performed well in 2016 when others ended in a cataclysmic disaster when Donald Trump won, surprising everyone. Robert Cahaly, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Let me start off asking this question, since you seem to have your head on your shoulders when it comes to polling. Is this hidden Trump phenomenon real? I mean, the pollster, the quote, mainstream pollsters out there seem to tell us President Trump's going to lose this thing by double digits.
Thanks, Don. Yes, it is absolutely for real. It's hard for me to believe that they could go through 2016 and have learned nothing. But they huddled up together and decided, they didn't wait properly for education or some nonsense. They cannot acknowledge that there are people who don't share their beliefs. It's frustrating, but it's entertaining too, because the idea that every single person that you talk to on the phone is telling the truth. And there's just nothing can be further from reality. People are being shamed for their opinions. People are being doxxed. People are being attacked. I mean, of course there's this phenomenon. So it's silly to me that they don't acknowledge it. And it's greater this time than it was before. And that's why you see a lot of polling groups that are now using my neighbor question. And yes, it was us that brought the neighbor question to national prominence. Google neighbor question 2016, you will see our name. But people are using it, and that's showing a great difference between those who say they are, the numbers for Biden and those who say the neighbors are for Trump, because that's part of identifying the hidden vote. And it is clearly there, and they don't want to admit it's there.
So this neighbor question, was that the difference in 2016 why the Trafalgar Group you guys nailed it over there, and were your predictions were pretty much on target, and everyone else was so off? Was it because of this "what is your neighbor going to do" question? Was that the differentiator between you and other polling outfits, which were way off?
It was part of it. That there's kind of four factors really. One, when we were doing the primaries, we noticed that our digital collection, our automated collection methods, were showing higher numbers for Trump. So we decided to do a little test, and we watched it. And sure enough, Trump was more aligned with the ones that were more anonymous, the digital, than they were with the live calls. So we kind of came up with a theory that the social desirability effect was in play in 2016. So we added the neighbor question, but we also noticed there were a lot of people who were voting who hadn't voted in a very long time. We're hearing anecdotes about people who can't use the machines and stuff like that. So we did a lot of research in the summer and found we came up with a list of factors that might lead somebody to participate in the election that hadn't participated in quite some time. Those were kind of these low propensity voters. So we added those into our sample, and then add to that the fact that we believe in short questionnaires. I think it's unrealistic in this modern world that you're going to call somebody and ask them 20 or 30 questions on a Thursday night at 7 o'clock. I mean, who can answer that? You either got to care too much on the left, too much on the right, or you're just bored. And none of those represent average people. So our questionnaires are very short, less than 3 minutes to answer the whole poll. And we also believe in large sample size. You'll never see a sample of state with under 1,000 people. And so all those factors together help us minimize the social desirability effect, but we can't eliminate it. But the minimization of it is why I think we're so different from everyone else this year.
We're talking to Robert Cahaly from the Trafalgar Group. Again, one of the few polling outlets that was on target in 2016 when everyone else blew it. Robert, I'd like your opinion on something. I ran in 2016. I ran for Congress in Florida District 19. So I'm pretty intimately familiar with the politics of Florida. And I noticed an interesting phenomenon. When you're a candidate for office in a Republican primary, which I was, you get a walk list to go knock on doors. And of course, the walk list of doors to knock on is only Republicans. It's a Republican primary. You're not going to waste your time knocking on Democrat doors. They can't vote in a Republican primary. And I saw this weird thing. I'd be on the walk list and I'd be down these blocks in Cape Coral and Naples and elsewhere. And I'd pass these homes that had Trump signs in the lawn, and yet they weren't on my list. So I called my campaign manager. This happened every day. And I'd say, "Hey, Maria, you missed this person on the list." She said, "No, I didn't. Our date is accurate. They don't vote." So I would go in and knock on the doors once in a while if we had some time to kill. And I'd say, "Sir, ma'am, notice you had a Trump sign, but you don't show up as a voter on our list here." And they'd say, "Yeah, I haven't voted in years or decades. This is my first time. Basically, I love Donald Trump," or some derivative of that. And it led me to believe before the election that he was going to win Florida huge because all these people who hadn't voted in a while were Trump supporters. Did that play into some of the polling mishaps in 2016?
Absolutely. And that's what I was talking about, low propensity voters. And, it is literally one of those things where, we've been doing studies on these in different states, even this year. And, we've looked at, and we've got a group between 1992 and 2016 that registered at any point up until the September deadline for the 2010 general election. So that, the kind of the Tea Party wave. And we're looking for people who just voted once. And quite often that once is 2016. And we think there are a lot of them coming back. So we built that into our models in 2016 when we did it because we saw them voting in the primary. And I mean, literally, they were just voters that hadn't voted in forever. So yes, it's absolutely playing then. It will play again this year. You're going to see people that you just didn't even know were still out there and they could possibly participate. They're not being called or their doors aren't being knocked. They're not getting mail. And they're just low information, low propensity voters, but they do like and are inspired by Trump and they're coming out to vote for him.
Yeah, I saw that throughout the entire election cycle. And I still have my podcast from the night before the election in 2016. And I said on the show, I don't like predictions, but I said he's going to win Florida. There's no way. I mean, I'm on the ground. I saw this kind of brewing. Regarding these polls we're seeing now, some of them which are all over the place that are not from your group, the Trafalgar group, where, like I said, you are one of the few people I follow religiously on social media because you're just a very sober analyst of what's going on. And I think you're going to be spot on in 2022, in 2020 as well. But are some of these polls out there from some of these, again, air quotes, mainstream outlets, are they dramatically oversampling Democrats? Because some of the sampling models for Democrats don't seem to marry up to what the turnout models in 2016 were. And why would you do that? I mean, if you're a polling company selling your product, there's no sensible business reason to embarrass yourself. Is there a reason they could be oversampling Democrats? Are they anticipating some huge blue wave? What am I missing here?
Well, let's start with a simple question. How many polling firms from major national outlets got fired after 2016? We can spend all day and you're not going to find a name. So there's not really a punishment for getting it wrong. And especially when you start to consider, why are they wrong? Are they wrong because they are trying to create are they agenda driven? And their purpose wasn't to get the election right, but was to convince people of a certain outcome and help move the electorate. So you have to figure out what their motivation is. Yes, they're absolutely undersampling certain people. And their argument is, well, 2020 is going to look a lot more like 2018 than it does 2016. Well, all right, fine, so be it. But even if you do that, and that's what we do, we take some of the extremes from 2018, still build them into the model, and anticipate probably a turnout that isn't even going to happen, that is more beneficial to the Democrats and Biden, just to be extra careful that we're not giving them a fair shake. But if your goal is what the numbers say, then you can change the turnout model to say what you want them to say, especially if you're not worried about being accurate. I mean, we put exactly what our percentages are in every one of our polls, be it geographic, ethnic, age, and all that, so we can demonstrate that we're balancing them correctly. But I think that there's a lot of that going on. But it's about trying to drive an agenda much more than it is trying to be accurate, because there's no punishment for failure.
Yeah. That's a really terrific point that I hadn't considered. You're right. Nobody has been fired. Now, listen, I'm a partisan. You're not. You're a pollster. Again, I'm an opinion guy. I don't pretend to be a journalist. But one of the things that does worry me, being a non-objective, subjective conservative here, is roughly 3 million or so Obama voters did not show up to vote for Hillary in 2016. Obviously, Obama was an exciting candidate for the Democrats, not for me, but for the Democrats. Hillary didn't generate that kind of excitement. Is there a possibility that these 3 million or millions plus of Obama voters show up again and cause a real turnout problem for Trump?
It's possible that a lot of Obama voters turn out, but let's remember who makes up the Obama coalition. Obama was a rejection of an establishment. Like it or not, even coming from the Republican perspective, there was a rejection of the Republican, running Congress and having the president for 8 years in a row. So, we've seen lots of people who are certainly Clinton, Bush, and then Obama and Trump voters. I mean, there are people who move back and forth between. There are a lot of similarities between Obama and Trump voters, especially in the battleground states. You hear it all the time. People who just wanted something other. I mean, they wanted to kind of throw a monkey wrench at the system. They thought Obama was that monkey wrench. They also thought Trump was that monkey wrench. They didn't necessarily get what they wanted out of Obama, but they certainly didn't think Hillary was the solution.
Interesting. I read something similar in the Wall Street Journal op-ed the other day. Yeah, that's a fascinating point. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking to Robert Cahaly from the Trafalgar Group, an excellent polling outfit. We'll be right back, on the other side of this break. All right, thanks for your patience here. We have another sponsor for the show today, our friends at ExpressVPN. They've been a great sponsor of the show. What if there was someone out there who kept the log of every single thing you did every minute of the day? Creepy, right? It would be creepy. Well, what if I told you that's exactly what happens every time you go online? Yepers. Your internet providers, AT&T, Comcast, and others, they're allowed to store logs of every website you've ever visited. and can legally sell this data to anyone. That's why we use in our house ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers so your internet provider can't see or log what you do online. Keep your online activity free from prying eyeballs. Many of you might be wondering, well, if I'm routing all my data through a VPN, doesn't that just mean the VPN can see what I'm doing and log my data instead? Well, you're right to think that. Many VPNs claim to have a no logs policy, but have been caught logging customers' activity anyway. ExpressVPN is the only VPN I trust because they use trusted server technology. They were the first major VPN provider to engineer all of their VPN servers to run in RAM. That makes it impossible for their VPN service to store any data, including logs of any ExpressVPN customer. You like that? I did. And you don't have to take my or ExpressVPN's word for it. ExpressVPN is so confident in their no logs claim, they even had one of their biggest assurance firms, PwC PricewaterhouseCoopers, audit their technology. It's no wonder that CNET and Wired named ExpressVPN the #1 VPN in the world. Stop letting people keep logs of what you do online. No good. Visit expressvpn.com/Bongino right now and find out how you can get 3 months free. That's expressvpn.com/Bongino, expressvpn.com/Bongino to learn more. Go today. Now back to my interview with Robert Cahaly of the Trafalgar Polling Group. All right, welcoming back Robert Cahaly from the Trafalgar Group, talking polling, the election in 2020 coming up very shortly, folks. Robert, if you don't mind, I'd like to just go state by state. We're not going to do all 50 states, obviously, but just a few that are areas of concern for me and others who listen to my show, and just kind of give a general trend, what you think, how it could turn out. Pennsylvania, obviously a critical state to the initial election in 2016 of President Trump. A state notably called Fool's Gold by Republicans for years who thought they could win it, and it never worked out. We hadn't won it, I think, since George H.W. Bush. No Republican had won it in a long time. President Trump did. He won it by a sliver. How does Pennsylvania look now? Because, again, other polling outlets are predicting a up to double-digit loss for President Trump in Pennsylvania, which doesn't sound right from my operatives that I'm hearing on the ground.
Yes, absolutely. I think Pennsylvania is a state that Trump can win. Now, I will give this same caveat that I've given in numerous media outlets. Pennsylvania, in my mind, is the state that is most likely that if Trump wins, he will still lose due to voter fraud. It is famous for voter fraud. I always get a lot of hate from Philly on Twitter. I can't figure out that more because I'm a Cowboys fan or more because I talk about their voter fraud. But either way, they don't like me very much. But the fact is, it has a history of it. And especially, I said it in the National Review article that came out Monday morning. And sure enough, by Monday afternoon, there was a court ruling that backed up what I said. I think that it's a state that he definitely can win. I expect him to win it. Does he win it by enough that he can eclipse the voter fraud? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've heard about that before as well. I mean, having run in Maryland as well, we always had a big problem with fraud in Baltimore City and other areas as well, even in an election where I ran for Congress. Moving on, so Wisconsin, I have, again, a number of friends on the ground in Wisconsin, said you can't drive through the swing counties anywhere in Wisconsin without being overwhelmed by Donald Trump signs. Listen, I get it. Signs aren't a pure indicator of who's going to win or lose. I mean, Beto O'Rourke had a ton of signs as well in Texas, but he overperformed. He did very well, even though he lost. Wisconsin, how does that look for you right now? Another state President Trump won, but again, mainstream pollsters are saying he's behind by a few points in.
We have Biden up by a sliver, and again, one of the things that we say is we can minimize the social desirability effect, but it exists even in our polls. My gut is that he's probably it's going to be very close, but he has an excellent chance of winning Wisconsin. I would tell you I believe the silent Trump voter, I think there's a lot of them out there. And so my math is usually for every sign you see, there's probably 3 more voters that don't live in that house that are for Trump that don't have a sign in their yard.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about some swing states here. Again, I don't want to go through all of them. You've been generous with your time already. But the one state that worries me the most, given the margin President Trump won by, is Michigan. Another state Republicans have had trouble with for eons that President Trump pulled out, surprisingly, on election night, but won by less than a point. Michigan seems to worry me. That's the one state where people on the ground, listeners and elsewhere, are telling me they think we could be in a little bit of trouble in Michigan. Now, he can lose Michigan and still win if he holds the rest of his states. But how are you feeling about Michigan? What do your numbers look like over there?
I feel a little better about Michigan than I do Wisconsin.
Good.
One, I think the strength of it is a very power. I mean, when you look around the other states, in Michigan, Trump has a very strong U.S. Senate candidate who I think is going to probably even outpace Trump in the votes. But John James puts forth a narrative that is hard to define Trump in the way that he's been defined with someone like John James, the next ballot, I mean, next race on the ballot. And I think John James has lifted him up. I also think that the best thing Trump has going in Michigan besides John James is Gretchen Whitmer. She is universally disliked, and especially because of her crazy COVID rules. I mean, stuff that didn't even make sense. And we see a lot of pushback on that. We do see a good deal of hidden vote in Michigan, but I expect that Michigan is a state that we have him up in Michigan, and I think he will win Michigan.
Putting me at ease there a little bit. See, that's why we have experts like you on the show, and I'm not a pollster. This is why we need you. That is a great point about John James, though. He is a fantastic candidate. I believe he'll be presidential timber one day. We'll see a lot of him. If he pulls this out over Peters, that'll be a huge, huge win. Let's do one more swing state. I feel pretty good about Ohio, so we'll leave that out. But my home state of Florida. Again, single subject designs, in my personal opinion, don't mean much. I'd rather hear yours. But down here in Florida, I live in a swing county in Martin County, which is pretty much 50-50. We've been represented by Democrats and Republicans in Congress here. I see Trump signs everywhere. I've seen Trump rallies, Trump sign waves. My wife's over there. Trump motorcades, right? Trump boat parades. Trump sky parades. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's everywhere. I have seen nothing for Biden. There's a guy down my block who has a Biden sign on his fence. That's it. It's the only Biden sign I've seen anywhere. And I'm in a swing county. I feel just pretty good about it, opinion-wise. What are your numbers telling you about Florida, the greatest swing state of all?
We have thought for weeks that Florida is a Trump victory. I think that Trump will exceed what he did in 2016. I think he will just exceed what Governor DeSantis did. I think it is going to be a significant win there, and it's going to be a little less hotly contested than people realize. The enthusiasm we see in the Hispanic community, especially the Cuban and Venezuelan community. I mean, I've seen some of the graffiti with like comparing Biden and Harris to Castro and to Chavez and to Maduro, and it's just amazing. I mean, there's so much energy, and when you look at it's a state that's very dependent on tourism. They've enjoyed the Trump economy when the tourism was going in, and Florida didn't get the hit like a lot of the other states did with COVID as far as shutdown in their economy. Trump has brought new energy to the space program. He's consolidated a greater portion of the Jewish vote than any Republican ever has. All these signs point in the right direction for Trump in Florida.
Yeah, I think he's even doing well with the northern Florida, Orlando area Puerto Rican vote, which is substantial. Just from, again, talking to a bunch of friends of mine who live up there. Let's talk about some states that could be potential flips in both directions, excuse me. Is there any possibility of Trump picking up states he lost, notably New Mexico, New Hampshire, and then specifically Maine 2 and Nebraska 2, where they break up the electoral vote within the state? Any possibility of Trump winning those areas he lost in the last election?
Well, I believe he did win Maine second and Nebraska.
I'm sorry, I had that backwards. Yeah, I'm sorry, my fault. I had that. Those were more for Biden. I'm sorry, New Mexico and New Hampshire for Trump. Forgive me, my fault. Any possibility of him flipping those?
No worries. I would tell you the two places I think Trump has the best chance to surprise people, and we're going to be polling these in the next 10 days, are Nevada and Minnesota. I think those two states, Nevada especially. Nevada really was a state that was very tight last time, and it comes down. There was a lot of support with the hospitality union for Hillary, but those hospitality union folks, they're good, hardworking folks, and man, they really like that Trump economy, and they don't like shutdowns because they don't get to go to work when there's shutdowns, and Biden threatening more shutdowns really kind of sends a chill down to some of them, and they're kind of bucking some of that union leadership. And then add to the unprecedented numbers Trump seems to be getting across the board with Hispanics. I think keep your eyes on Nevada, and Minnesota is ground zero for all this calamity and chaos. And I feel like there's going to be a big loud voice of people from across Minnesota, including St. Paul, saying we are not Minneapolis.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine, a former Major League Baseball player, lives in Minnesota now. Said that there's again Trump energy everywhere over there. On the inverse, there any possibility of Biden flipping states Trump won, like we said, Maine 2. What about Arizona? Any possibility of Biden maybe making a play there?
Yeah, they're definitely going to work hard in Arizona. Arizona is going to be tight. North Carolina is going to be tight. Wisconsin is going to be tight. Those are all ones where I think Biden has an excellent chance. I think he has an excellent chance of, along with not that he's coordinating with them, but along with some people who want to steal some votes in Pennsylvania. I think that represents a possibility. Yeah, those are states that I think could go the other way, but I really don't see much of that happening. I think that probably Wisconsin is the one I'm probably most worried about, but I'd put North Carolina as a close second.
Interesting. My father lives in. I didn't get to North Carolina. Couple more quick questions for you. You've been generous with your time. We're talking to Robert Cahaly from the Trafalgar Polling Group, a fantastic group. Follow these guys on social media. They're really, really terrific. Any chance some of these Senate candidates that are struggling in some of these polls benefit from a Trump turnout? I mean, you have Tillis in North Carolina, Ernst in Iowa, Cory Gardner, who appears to be in a significant amount of trouble in Colorado. Any chance they get a bump from Trump, or is it the other way around, like you said, Michigan, where Trump may get a bump from John James?
Well, I think what James and Trump are mutually beneficial in Michigan for each other. But I think that what we've seen in the past is Trump's going to have some coattails. This is a guy who has coattails, and I expect that we're going to see a little bit of a Trump wave, and it could be as much as 4 or 5% that we see a jump. We look at kind of what that wave was 4 years ago. These polls are tighter than they were 4 years ago, even with the mainstream. If you look at RCP, and that's really the only average you ought to be looking at. Anything else has an agenda. But I think if you look at those, you'll see they're tighter now. I think that wave could be 4 or 5 points. And, if it's, 4, 5, 6 points, you're going to start seeing things like Colorado getting competitive enough with Cory Gardner to get there. You're going to see McSally being able to get there. You're going to see Tillis getting there easily. You're going to see, no real trouble for Ernst. I mean, it's really possible. And that Minnesota Senate race, I think you could see some magic there too. If that wave is as big as I think it really could be.
Yeah, that would be huge. That's obviously a 6-year seat too. That caused big trouble for the Democrats trying to get a majority back in the Senate. Just a couple more questions for you. The question I get most of all when I told people I was going to have you on the show, they were very excited. And I got a couple of emails and social media requests for this one. I get this all the time. Is there a possibility President Trump sets a record for a Republican with the black vote? Anywhere from, say, 10 to 15, maybe even higher percent of the black vote, which would be historic, at least in modern times.
Well, let me address this as I did Pennsylvania. Okay? Yes, I think he got a lot of black vote last time. But if you're relying on the mainstream media and their exit polls to determine which black voters voted for him and what his numbers are, let's think about this for a second. If you're not going to tell the truth on the phone, when you are confronted with some kid with a laptop or an iPad or a clipboard, are you going to tell the truth to them? His black vote was understated last time. He will do at least 15%,
really?
If not higher.
Wow.
We see that across the board in these battleground states right now. We see them as high as 20 in some of them. But will you ever know? Because if you depend on the mainstream media and their flawed exit polls, the same exit polls that said Hillary was going to win and had them dancing in the control rooms at 6 o'clock and before they started crying at about 9 o'clock, then you're never going to know it. So yes, he's going to do extremely well. Will you know it? Well, not if you depend on exit polls.
That's a wonderful point. I was on the air with a different outlet on election night, and you're right. by 6 or 7 p.m., they were celebrating. They were cracking the crystal. It's
Exit poll
over.
shows
President
she's gonna
Clinton. And then by 2 o'clock in the morning, it was over. They called Pennsylvania. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Well,
you're right, though.
I don't get it.
Yeah,
it's so obvious. No, but we're agreeing with each other, over each other. It's just so obvious that people are lying. Yeah. Exit polls wouldn't be wrong if everybody was telling the truth. Why they cannot accept it, I do not understand.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you're not willing to tell someone on the phone because of social stigma of supporting Trump, you're certainly not going to tell anyone in person with an iPad. That's a great point. Last question, I'll let you go. Again, we're talking to Robert Cahaly from the Trafalgar Group. Again, can't say in strong enough terms, can't recommend them on social media. Please check them out, Robert, as well as the Trafalgar Group. They're terrific. So I'm following the early numbers. This show is being recorded and it'll air about a week and a half before the election. And I'm noticing that the Democrats typically do well in early voting. Republicans in many states tend to show up on game day. With coronavirus, who knows where that's going to go. But they typically need a really big lead, the Democrats, in early voting going into Election Day to win. A quick example I've been following is North Carolina, state you brought up before, where Hillary was ahead in early voting, roughly 15 or 16 points, and still lost the state. Now, Joe Biden's only ahead now by 14 points, 2 points less than Hillary. So are the Democrats missing their early voting targets? And is this a good sign for Republicans?
Well, I think the comparison with 2016 is a strong one, and consider that they're having even more turnout this time. So they really ought to be running these margins up, but they're not. And I think, the only thing, so yes, I think the early voting is not working the way that the Democrats would want it to work, but I think that we need to be very wary of something else. Whenever one party has a lot to gain by nobody showing up on Election Day, it can be a very scary few days. And that, I think, is my greatest worry for the strength of this entire democracy, of shenanigans that will happen, exaggerations of what's going on with coronavirus leading up to the election, possible fear of retribution for those who vote in the polls. But there would be every incentive, if they wanted to play dirty, to try to affect turnout, especially if they thought they had an advantage if very few people voted on Election Day.
So you're saying that this is you really caught my attention. You're saying it may garner a sense of desperation with the side that's not hitting their numbers. Is that where you're going with it? Because I agree. I mean, having run myself, everybody
just imagine that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if the Democrats think, hey, we don't even have the advantage we did last time, this time, Election Day voting is going to do us in. I mean, who knows? I mean, it worries me. You start thinking about Antifa and all kind of shenanigans, and before you know it, we got a few polling places that were burned down or bombed and all that kind of stuff leading up to the day or two before, and people get nervous. Yeah. And I think that's the way really bad things happen for this country, is if everybody didn't get a fair shot to vote.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Regardless what side you're on, you ought to be for everybody having their fair shot.
No, amen to that. I'm in full agreement there that voter suppression is immoral, unethical, not the hallmark of a constitutional republic like ours. I'd rather lose than cheat. There's that I agree with you 100%. Robert, you've been incredibly generous with your time. Thank you very much. Again, you did not disappoint one bit. I watched you on the Sean Hannity show the other day. You were spectacular, and you did not disappoint. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, and it's an honor to be here. Thanks, care.
Robert. So you're looking at the 2020 election differently now after that interview? He was great, wasn't he? Robert Cahaly. Follow him on social media. Absolutely terrific. All right, we have other sponsors today. They paid to be here and to talk to you. We love our sponsors. I love Raycon. I use their wireless earbuds. Here's mine right here. Use them all the time when I'm flying, listening to podcasts, when I'm on conference calls. You know the best way to listen? Use a pair of premium wireless earbuds like I do, Raycon. Especially if you can get them at less than half the price of the other overpriced guys. That's why I use and recommend wireless earbuds from Raycon. Love them. They're the only ones, honestly, that fit my ears without falling out. Raycon's newest model, the Everyday E25 earbuds, are the best ones yet, with 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, a compact design, a noise-isolating fit, and they just look cool. Check them out. Again, those are mine right there, in case. Raycon earbuds are stylish and discreet, no dangling wires or stems. The company was co-founded by Ray J. People are obsessed with their products. Give them a try. Raycon has a 45-day free return policy, so you can make sure they're the pair of wireless earbuds for you. They are. We wouldn't have them on the show. For a limited time, get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/Bongino. That's buyraycon, RAYCON.com/Bongino for a special 15% discount on Raycon wireless earbuds. Make sure to check it out now while the deal's still running. Buyraycon.com/Bongino. Best earbuds out there right now for a really terrific price. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at BCM. BCM, short for Bravo Company Manufacturing, was started in a garage by a Marine veteran more than 2 decades ago. What do? They build professional-grade products built to combat standards. That's because BCM believes the same level of protection should be provided to every American, regardless if they're a private citizen or a professional. Bravo Company Manufacturing is not a sporting arms company. I know that's weird to tell you what a company isn't rather than what they are, but it's important. They design, engineer, and manufacture life-saving equipment. Their firearms they're not hunting rifles. There are other companies that do that. They're not sporting arms. They manufacture life-saving equipment. Their firearms are made because they assume when any rifle leaves their shop, it'll be used in a life or death situation, God forbid, but by a responsible citizen, law enforcement officer, and a soldier overseas. Quality is all that matters to them. I have 2 of them myself. Every component of a BCM rifle is hand-assembled and tested by Americans in Heartland, Wisconsin to a life-saving standard. These 2 I have never let me down, ever. On point every single time at the range. Every time. Never fails. Mine have been great. Thank you, BCM. They put people before their products. BCM knows making reliable, life-saving tools is only half the story. They work with leading instructors of marksmanship from top levels of America's Special Operations Forces community. These instructors teach the skills necessary to defend yourself, your family, or others. To learn more about Bravo Company Manufacturing, head on over to Bravo Company MFG, like MaryFrankGeorge.com. You can discover more about their fantastic products, special offers, and upcoming news. That's Bravo Company MFG.com. You need more convincing? Check out their YouTube channel. Find out more about BCM and the awesome people who make their products at youtube.com/Bravo Company USA. Check them out. Now to my interview with former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Ladies and gentlemen, this one gets a little emotional at times. I really can't believe what Biden did to his family and what the Chinese were really up to. Pay very close attention to this interview with former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Check this out. I'm pleased to welcome back to the show former mayor of New York City and lawyer to the president, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us again. Your first episode was one of our, if not the most watched interview we've ever done on the show. So we appreciate you coming back. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. I'm glad to be back. You've been nothing less than heroic.
No, oh gosh, thank you. Well, likewise, you exposing this disastrous information on the Biden crime family has just been incredible. The man appears to be a national security threat right now running for president. Mr. Mayor, I've been following this story on my show. You have been at the forefront of getting this information out there. We got some devastating new revelations in one of the ugliest scandals I've seen in a long time about, it's disturbing to even talk about, potential inappropriate behavior with children on Hunter Biden's computer. I have not seen these photos. You have. You went to the police. How bad is this stuff?
I've got to be careful, obviously, how I describe it. It does involve minors.
Sure.
First, let me read to you the way Hunter Biden, describes it, because it'll give you both sides of it and then the problem. He wrote in September 23rd, 2018, to his father. He wrote the following. She, meaning his sister-in-law with whom he had a relationship, lived in our home. She told my therapist that I was sexually inappropriate with a 14-year-old girl when she says that I FaceTime naked with her. And the reason I can't have her out to see me is because I'll walk around naked, smoking crack, telling tom girls on FaceTime. When she was pressed, she said that I never said anything like that. But the bottom line is that I create and cause a very unsafe environment for the kids. So you have 2 versions, right? You have the therapist and the girl apparently saying that he FaceTime naked with her and that he walked around naked in front of her smoking crack. According to him, when she was pressed, she withdrew it. So we don't know. But he does admit that he created, to his father, a very unsafe environment for the kids. Well, that's enough. An unsafe environment for the kids would require mandatory reporting. If I was a mandatory reporter, as you were when you were a police officer, or I was when I was the mayor or U.S. attorney. But it's worse than that, really. There are 3 or 4 other texts from family members about how dangerous the environment is for the kids. And then there are a whole group of photographs. It's very hard to describe them. Let me talk about the adult ones first. The adult photographs are pornography, him involved in it, a lot of shots of him admiring his private parts, a lot of shots of him smoking crack. Oh, yeah, kind of like Wiener. A lot of him smoking crack, a lot of him smoking crack and having sex with 1 or 2 women. A kind of fetish thing that he does. So these are all over the computer. Yeah. Also all over the computer are pictures of 14 or 15-year-old girls in seductive poses of different kinds. Some are normal, some are quite normal, some are marginal, and some are quite clear. And one is very clear. So when we came across that, Bernie Carrick and I were examining it. And we went over the text messages first. I found this maybe 3-4 days ago, this text message about where he was walking around naked, and then she says no, but it created an unsafe environment. And that's what motivated me to go and take a good look at the pictures. And I was shocked when I saw them. So this is not my area of expertise, and in many ways it's not even Bernie's, right? So we called 2 very, very highly skilled former New York City detectives who did child endangerment cases as a career. And I showed it to them and I said, what are my obligations here? What do I have to do? And they said, well, actually, since it's been given to the FBI, you don't have to do anything. But since the FBI has had it for almost a year, and from every other aspect of the case, there seems to have been no action taken, you should probably be safe and report it to the local police. Well, of course, the local police is in Delaware, and he owns Delaware, right? But we thought, the heck with it. You know, Bernie and I don't get afraid too easily, right? Right. So I called the Delaware police. I probably, made them faint. And I told them who I was, and I told them I wanted to come and deliver what I considered to be the material that I had an obligation to deliver to them, and that they had an obligation to investigate. So we went down there on Monday morning. We brought with us the illustrations that we thought kind of laid this out. We also brought the entire hard drive if they wanted it. And we showed it to them, did a long presentation. They examined it. They asked for the hard drive. And then they basically assured us that they were going to, analyze it and investigate it. And then we learned a day later that they sent it up to the AG of Delaware, who's a politically elected official, Democrat and ally of Senator Biden's. And then she punted it to the FBI. So think about that, right? Yeah. It made a circle, right? It's been with the FBI for 10 months. Right. They've taken no action, and they sent it back to the FBI. But something did happen. Early yesterday, there was a leak from the FBI that the emails that we presented, the ones that Chris Wallace accused me of being unreliable. Right. I'm not happy about that.
Yeah, he shouldn't be, right?
The FBI found to be accurate, valid, and connected to an ongoing money laundering case that they have going on. And I have some knowledge of that case. And then beyond the money laundering case, there are 5 cases here that if I were a U.S. attorney, I could have this indictment, assuming the testimony works out the same way as the text messages and emails, could probably have the indictment in a month. And they're very serious cases. We know some of them. I mean, we know about Ukraine, and we know that Hunter Biden was paid, the total amount is in excess of $10 million in Ukraine, including some money laundered payments that haven't been counted. I have the proof of that. I think I showed you that once, the document that goes from Ukraine, the money goes from Ukraine to Latvia to Cyprus. It's disguised as loans to fictitious companies, and then it ends up in the Hunter Biden, John Kerry's stepson company. So we get about $10 to $14 million from Ukraine that comes to them for no apparent reason, because we now find out that Hunter never showed up in Ukraine. So now we have to describe this as a no-show job. A no-show job means you're being paid for something else. You can assume what that something else is, since Joe Biden acted to have the prosecutor dismissed. But remember, the prosecutor was not just investigating Hunter Biden. The prosecutor was investigating a very dangerous, organized criminal, Ukrainian oligarch named Mykola Zlochevsky, who had stolen $5 billion and was in exile. He was Hunter's employee.
He was running Burisma, correct, Mr. Mayor?
From afar.
Now to be clear, though, they also, Burisma didn't just, this isn't just about Hunter Biden. Also, Mr. Mayor, I covered on my show the other day, they had also hired other people, politically connected Democrats. You know, Devin Archer connected to John Kerry, lighter guy who was John Kerry's old chief of staff. These Burisma guys knew what they were doing when they were hiring politically connected Democrats like Hunter Biden.
Yeah, and they also knew something that the American media covers up, and that's Joe's for sale. Joe has been for sale since he was a cheap little senator in Delaware, and you could get him for a few $1,000s. I mean, it was notorious that Joe's brother James was probably the most unethical lobbyist in Washington, constantly getting Biden in trouble. And Biden would always get away with it by saying, I don't know anything about my family's business. I figure you could say that. I mean, Kate Corleone got to say it once. Any other criminal gets to say it twice. You say 3 times, I don't know my family's business, and your family's business is to shake people down for money, well, I'm going to put you in jail. But he said it about 10 times. But because he's Joe Biden, it was left alone. So we have the Ukraine, and we have 5 witnesses sitting in the Ukraine that are ready to get on a plane and come here and testify under oath that this was a bribe to Joe Biden, not having to do with Hunter at all. Hunter was the bag man. Hunter was the conduit to hide the payment to Joe. So then the second one we have is Iraq. In Iraq, he's appointed and sent there to negotiate a status of forces agreement so that we're allowed to keep troops there. He fails miserably in doing that, which leads to the death of a substantial number of people because our troops weren't there, including people in the MEK who I and many other people represent. These are Iranian dissidents who sided with the United States and were killed in that period of time when we didn't have protection for them because Joe Biden failed. But once again, Joe Biden failed like he did in Ukraine, but the Biden family did really well. His brother James, who has as little experience in housing as Hunter has in energy, becomes part of a $1.5 billion housing redevelopment contract in Iraq, just at the time that he becomes point man. And it looks like he could have pulled out big money, 100 million. He got 1/3 of 1.5 billion. It's hard to tell who the hidden partners were, but he got a lot of money. And that money went to him not because he knows a damn thing about housing. It went to him to pay off Joe. And once again, Joe failed the United States. Now we move to Russia, where he gets 3.5 million from Hunter does, from the wife of the mayor of Moscow, who is a very, very close associate of Vladimir Putin. It's really, when you count the extra money that comes in, which we've now found, it's getting closer to $4 million. But it looks to be the first payment in a money laundering scheme that they're trying to set up with Russia. That has to be further investigated. But
So-
there is no real explanation for this $4 million from Russia. Now, that one got me really mad, Dan, because I spent 2.5 years and the president spent 4 years defending against the Russian collusion false charge.
The hoax.
Well, we didn't get anything from Russia, and they got at least $4 million from Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, everything they accused the Trump team of, they did themselves.
Yeah, and there's no explanation for this money. So there's no explanation for money going to the son of the vice president who can't do anything. I figure the explanation is it's to influence the vice president. And finally, we get the two China transactions. The one that everyone knows about, has been talked about a lot. He flies his son to China on Air Force Two. He goes off to negotiate for the U.S. to get them out of the islands they dispute with Japan and to have them lower tariffs. And we don't know what Hunter does. 8 days. Joe fails again. They don't get out of the islands. In fact, in a short period of time, they put more troops there. They don't lower the tariffs. They raise the tariffs. The newspapers at the time criticized Joe for being such a failure and point out that the combination of Kerry and Biden is much easier on China than even Hillary Clinton was. What the newspapers at the time don't know is that a private equity fund that is owned by Biden's son, Kerry's stepson, and Whitey Bulger's nephew got a commitment of $1.5 billion from China. The first $1 billion came within 8 days of Joe taking him over on Air Force Two. Now, that's a partnership with the government of China because the Bank of China is owned by China. So we had, for a rather lengthy period of time, a sitting vice president negotiating with China, whose son was a partner with the Chinese Communist government. And no one told us that. Obama never told us. No one told us. I have no idea if American intelligence made a record of it. If they didn't, they should all be, well, they can't be fired anymore. They should be prosecuted, really. I mean, this is...
Yeah. You know what's stunning, Mr. Mayor? I could not have been made it through the Secret Service selection process to protect a president with this kind of stuff on, not even close. I'd probably be under investigation. And yet we have a man running for the White House, and his son and his family seem to be involved in, according to one of their business partners, this man who emerged this week, Lieutenant Bobulinski, forgive me if I'm saying his name wrong, who was a business partner of this, he's not anonymous, he's given his name, who's now saying the Chinese understood, Mr. Mayor, from the start, this was not an ROI operation. They weren't looking for a monetary return. It was a political influence operation.
Well, I have a different word for it. They were bribing him. They were buying him.
Clear as day.
Okay. Then Joe goes out of office, and he's rumored to be the leading Democratic candidate for president. And the Chinese, who they were making an investment. They were making an investment in buying Joe, and they figured they could really jam him up. So the Biden family goes into a partnership. 3 members of the Biden family, James, Sarah, that's brother and sister-in-law, and Hunter, with these 2 people, Bobulinski and Galliars, on one side. On the other side, 3 Chinese communists. One, a very high-level member, who's also a Chinese high-level intelligence operative named Xi Jinping. His operative in America is a gentleman named Stanley Ho. And the other spy they have working in America is Kevin Dong. They all join in a partnership. Here's the partnership. The Biden family is going to get $10 million a year and 50% of the profits in order to make introductions for CEFC, which is a Chinese energy company, which is owned by the Chinese communists. It may be a bit of a front for an intelligence operation. To me, this looks more like an intelligence operation to jam up the Bidens big time. So now when we get the when we get the hard drive, I start searching it. And lo and behold, I get the contract. I just told it to you. And then I go a little more into it. And behind it is another piece of paper with another contract. And the other contract has something else added to it that isn't in the first one. And the numbers are a little different. So you can come up with 10% left. And it says 10% 2H for the big guy. So I'm sorry, I'm a cynical prosecutor. I knew right away that was Joe Biden.
Right.
But of course, I knew the New York Times would say, oh, absolutely not. Joe's not he's not that big, or somebody's made it up, or the Russians wrote it. Now, it wasn't written in Russian, but the Russians wrote it. So I said, we got to corroborate this. So the first thing we did is we found a document in which they assigned the keys for the new office, in which the Bidens were going to be, I can't even say this, the Bidens were going to be in business with the Chinese communists. Now, I mean, that's insane. So Hunter says, here's the keys we need. Key number 1, Joe Biden. Key number 2, Jill Biden. Number 3, James. Number 4, him. So the big guy gets the first key. So that was the first indication it was the big guy. Then we look through it more carefully and we see that in other references, including social references, people writing to Hunter refer to his father as the big guy. Here's one, just a social reference from a fellow named Jeff Rogers at or about that time. Hunt, see below, big night in Leipzig. I was not there, but heard all about it. The big guy made them happy. The speaker that night was Vice President Joe Biden, who spoke at the Leipzig Fire Hall. Clearly, that's a nickname for Joe. Right? And then we have now Mr. Babolinsky, who was the CEO of this company, by the way, who has testified and submitted an affidavit under oath that the big guy was Joe Biden, that Joe Biden was indeed a participant in the money, that not only that, all that stuff about Joe Biden not knowing about Hunter's foreign business, which I think we disprove with the meetings with the vice president, that's total crap, that Hunter doesn't do a damn thing without talking to Joe, and that there's no doubt that all over the years, Hunter's been kicking money back to Joe and taking care of Joe's expenses, which explains why Joe, who's never been anything but a senator and his wife a teacher, has 5 homes. People have always wondered how he got the 5 homes.
Me too.
I don't think he's an investment expert.
Yeah, I don't either. So. Mr. Mayor, you said something there pretty profound. I want to be sure the audience doesn't miss this. Is there a possibility here, just to reiterate this, that this from the start was a Chinese operation to get dirt on the Bidens, knowing that he'd run for, I mean, you said that. I just want to be sure the audience understands. Me having some background in intelligence stuff, that's perfectly possible that this could have been an op from the start. Nothing to do with business and everything to do with dirtying up the Bidens. 2
possibilities. The Chinese are dumb and like to give away billions of dollars.
Right.
Or the Chinese are, among other things, very intelligent, and they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they figure it was a good investment in the vice president, since he had a lot of discretion over the islands, the tariffs, and he sold us out like crazy. I mean, it was pathetic. America was sold out completely. If you lost your job to China somewhere in the mid part of 2015, 16, 17, thank Joe Biden. You lost your job. Biden made $1.5 billion. I mean, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I think they figured that's over, but they had to have another hold on this weak man. So they came up with this deal, and the idiot becomes a 10% partner. But it's worse than that, Dan. There is one text message here that explains the whole 30-year racketeering enterprise. This is the method of payment. Joe is the big guy, the boss of the family. Mm-hmm. Hunter, James, Sarah, possibly Frank, collect the money. They're the bad men.
Right.
So Hunter explains now to his daughter, because she's getting older and she may have to take on some of these, I don't know, take on some of these responsibilities. I mean, Joe likes to keep the crime family in the crime family.
Right.
This is Hunter. I love you all, but I don't receive any respect. And that's fine, I guess. Works for you, apparently. I hope you all can do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years. It's really hard. But don't worry. Unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary.
Wow. That's incredible.
For 30 years, Hunter has been given Biden half of what he earns because Hunter has jobs that are fronts to produce bribe money for Joe. This is a classic bagman situation. It's also very similar to the way Schweiker, at the beginning of Secret Empire, describes the Chinese form of corruption. They don't pay the principal. They pay the trusted people around the principal, trusting the people around the principal to take care of him, to make sure he gets the proper money at the right time, and to make sure he wants for nothing. That's the system they set up. And it went on all throughout this. And I knew they were doing this 2 years ago. I just couldn't prove it. But every little piece that I got, when I saw this, I said, I can't believe you put it in writing, Hunter, but all the circumstantial evidence leads to this. This is what's going on. This man, Biden, is a thoroughly corrupt human being. And I think he's a very bad man. And I'm going to tell you why I think he's a bad man. Because when you read all this, you realize that Hunter Biden is a very troubled young man. And Hunter Biden, years ago, should have been taken out of this dirty business. And he should have been put in some easy business where a drug addict gets a chance to rehabilitate. I know a bit about drug addiction. I think you do too. Yeah. And the way in which you deal with drug addicts, you don't put them under stress. So this father has his son dealing with some of the worst criminals in the world. Mykola Zlochevsky is an organized criminal and a killer. Elena Butarina may be a woman. She's got her share of notches on her belt. Xi Jinping is a member of Chinese organized crime. And during the course of their partnership, he ended up in the Yangtze River. He's now at the bottom of the Yangtze River if you want to find him. Yeah. A number of people that this kid did business with got killed. The number 2 guy in that partnership went to jail. And the first person he asked for when he went to jail was James Biden. Wow. And his own partner, Devin Archer, is going to jail. So his father surrounded him. This reminds me of the mafia. There were the mafia members who kept their kids in the business, and there were mafia members who went to all lengths to get their kids out of the business. Joe went to all lengths to keep his kid in the business. And when you feel sorry for Hunter being a drug addict, that's okay. You can feel sorry for Hunter being a drug addict, but there's a reason that drug addiction was never cured. And the reason it wasn't cured is Joe Biden.
No, that's a great point. It's a sad point, but a great one. And Mr. Mayor, nobody understands organized crime, better than you. It was just interesting on a side note. I was watching, I don't know, History Channel or whatever special on the crime, organized crime in New York City, and you were probably 40% of the episode. How you came in there and really pioneered the use of RICO to dismantle these crime families, which had run New York for decades. So that was great. You did a great job back then. But today I was covering on my show. By the time this airs, it was a few days ago. How it seems like they knew about Biden's problems here, that his associations were going to be troublesome, potentially criminal, and they covered it up. I showed a Time article and a Washington Post article from back in 2014, but when they were actually interested in this case before they knew Biden was going to run for president. But one of the things I found interesting is an old Wall Street Journal article. Burisma, the company Hunter Biden was working for, headed by this corruptocrat Zlochevsky, they had some interesting partnerships, Mr. Mayor. They partnered up with the Atlantic Council, really polluted with deep state swamp rats who were Clinton donors and everything else. And they also partnered with the Transatlantic Election Commission on election integrity, which is a fascinating partnership with a company like Burisma with all these corruption allegations. And who gets appointed to this Election Integrity Transatlantic Commission after he leaves office to investigate foreign interference in election? Joe Biden, which is insane, which says to me, they already knew this was going to come out and they were going to use election interference and Russian disinformation as a canard to keep people like you and others from looking into it.
Well, Joe Biden made his confession of a bribe in front of the Atlantic Council in January of 2018. That's when he stood up with that famous, I told Poroshenko, if he didn't fire the guy, he's going to be gone. And
that's right.
Money's going to be gone in 7 hours. And then Poroshenko said, well, you're not the president. And he said, call him on the phone.
Call him on the phone.
First of all,
and son of a...
excuse the language. Joe Biden doesn't have the you-know-whats to act like that. Joe Biden is a weak little man. That never took place, that meeting. He incriminated himself with it in front of the Atlantic Council. The thing that amazes me is he admitted a straight out bribe. He admitted, I withheld $1 billion unless you took official action that I require. That's the definition of bribery. That's what they wanted to impeach President Trump for. Impeach President Trump, but let Biden become president because he actually did it. And the Atlantic Council sat there and they yawned when he said it. But when it happened with President Trump, we ended up with a worldwide commotion until it was proved that it was not true. I mean, from the very beginning, it was clear to me that this was a bribery case. He admitted it. All you need is that tape. The tape admits every part of it. Now we've got 20 pieces of evidence that prove it. We've got videotapes, we have documents, we have text messages, we have emails, and we have direct witnesses, about 10. This is a racketeering case. Should be prosecuted as a Biden crime family racketeering case. Racketeering just doesn't apply to organized crime. I prosecuted Milken that way, prosecuted Boesky that way, I prosecuted Wall Street that way,
that's right.
And I prosecuted corrupt congressmen, commissioners, Republican and Democrats that way. It's intended for long-term crime associations. And this is a very long-term crime association. Don't take my word for it. Take his word for it. 30 years.
30
and the
years.
money goes to the big guy.
Splitting the
salary. Big guy is the public office holder. That is defined as bribery unless we really have become so corrupt that Democrats can do anything. They can be engaged in multi-million-dollar sales of the United States. The damage this does to our reputation when our public officials act this way in a place like Ukraine, where we're trying to convince them to be more honest, they laugh at us. China laughs at us. We say China's corrupt. And they say, well, you got Biden.
Right. You're right. They probably are laughing.
Hey, Biden's expensive, but we can buy him.
Yeah, we had our own diplomats, though, Mr. Mayor. George Kent and others, even Amos Hochstein had warned, hey, listen, this could be a serious problem. It's not like they didn't know and they just didn't care enough to do anything about it.
They raised it as a conflict of interest. Whatever else they are, they're intelligent men. If you didn't know this was a bribe, you shouldn't be working for the government.
It's true.
If I had an assistant U.S. attorney who looked at this and couldn't figure it out with a bribe, I'd tell him to go write wills.
Right. Well, Mr. Mayor, you've been incredibly generous with your time. You have done yeoman's work in exposing the second biggest scandal of all time after exposing the first biggest scandal of all time, Spygate. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We really appreciate it.
And I have to say, Dan, of all the people who have stayed with this from day one, you're probably one of the strongest, one of the best, one of the most articulate, and the one that really connects with people. So and the president, and the president appreciates it. And he doesn't appreciate it as a special favor. He appreciates your honesty and integrity. Because whatever they want to say about Donald Trump, I've known him for 30 years. He's an honest man. He would never do this. And I got to tell you, he's one hell of a father. He doesn't know all these facts yet. When I tell him all these facts, he knows some of them. I almost didn't tell him because I thought when he debated him, he might rip his head off. There's nothing that bothers me more than a parent that doesn't take care of their child and that ruins their child because they're so darn narcissistic. It's their career and they want to be multi-millionaires.
Yeah,
this gross. Guy, Hunter Biden, didn't have to be in this. And if Joe Biden wanted to get his millions and millions and millions, there are plenty of bad men around Washington who would have gladly done it for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a great point. A sad point, but a good one. Former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, a great man. He used to work for you, cleaned up my hometown, New York City. I wish you'd go back and clean it up again. So, gosh, we could use you back there. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
And God bless you, and I'm praying for you. You know that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you've been through it, so you know it's tough news to get.
You're a strong man. You're a strong man, my friend.
All right, Mr. Mayor. Talk to you soon. Take care. Welcome, Lightstream. Hey, the average interest rate on a credit card. You know it's over 18% APR? Have you looked at your interest rate lately? You should. Refinance your high-interest credit card balances and save with a credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream. Rates start at 5.95% APR with autopay and excellent credit. The rate's fixed, so it'll never go up over the life of the loan. Plus, there are no fees. Get a loan from $5,000 to $100,000. You can even get your money as soon as the day you apply. How handy is that? Lightstream believes that people with good credit deserve a better loan experience, and that's exactly what they deliver. Here's some comments on it. Hey, I heard about Lightstream on a podcast, and I was able to look on the website and get clear information. The application process was quick and easy. Me and my wife looked it up too. The website is super easy to use, clear as day. My listeners can save even more with an additional interest rate discount. The only way to get this discount is to go to lightstream.com/Bongino. That's lightstream.com/Bongino. lightstream.com/Bongino. Subject to credit approval, rates range from 5.9% APR to 19.9% APR and include a 0.50% auto pay discount. Lowest rate requires excellent credit. Terms and conditions apply and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/Bongino for more information. That's lightstream.com/Bongino for more information. Final sponsor of the day before our interview with the great Steve Cortes from the Trump campaign, you will not be disappointed in this one, are our friends at Stamps.com. Stamps.com. Our friends at Stamps.com. All right. Thank you, Ms. Paul. Don't you dare get that out. We love Stamps.com. Oh, I love my wife too, so it's a perfect segue. Hey, this holiday season, more people will be mailing stuff than ever before. It means the post office is going to be busy. It gets crazy over there. You don't have time for that. Stamps.com brings the post office and now UPS shipping right to your computer. Mail and ship anything from the convenience of your home or office. With Stamps.com, anything you can do at the post office, you can do with just a few clicks. Plus, Stamps.com saves you money with deep discounts you can't even get at the post office. Whether you're a small office sending out a couple invoices, an online seller fulfilling orders during this holiday season, or even a giant warehouse sending thousands of packages a day all over, Stamps.com handles it all with ease. Simply use your computer to print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, any package, any class of mail, anywhere you want to send it. When your mail's ready, just schedule a pickup or drop it off. It's really that simple. With Stamps.com, you can get 5 cents off every first-class stamp and up to 40% off priority mail and up to 62% off UPS shipping rates. Not to mention, it's a fraction of the cost of those expensive postage meters. Stamps.com is a no-brainer. It saves you time and it saves you money. Don't spend a minute of your holiday season at the post office this year. Sign up for Stamps.com instead. There's no risk. With my promo code DAN, D-A-N, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale. There's no long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of their homepage, and type in DAN, D-A-N. Stamps.com, enter DAN by clicking the microphone at the top of the homepage. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. Now to our final interview in the show. Proud of this one. And I'm proud of Steve Cortes. He does a great job for the Trump campaign. Check this out. All right, part of my election special, the great Steve Cortes, a man I am pleased to call a friend, one of the strongest advocates for conservatism out there. Steve Cortes, welcome to the show, my friend.
Dan, you're a great American. Thanks for having me. Let's together with the audience make America great again.
Listen, man, fingers are crossed, toes are crossed, legs are crossed. Everything that can be crossed is crossed. The alternative is disastrous. I love you on television, cable news, and radio. I really believe you are one of the strongest advocates for the president and his growth agenda out there. It's why I wanted to have you on for our election special here. Let me get right to it. Listen, obviously the media sucks. I mean, we can just get past that now. We don't need to, they're terrible. But one of the things that really bothers me about them is they haven't nailed down yet Joe Biden on his cataclysmic middle-class tax bomb coming. He has said, Steve, repeatedly, he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Now, anyone can go to the internet and look up the Trump tax cuts. It's not hard. And you can see that the middle class got a huge tax cut. So if Biden's going to repeal them, doesn't that mean by default that Joe Biden is going to hike taxes on the middle class?
Right. You don't have to be a mathematician to follow that logic along, right? 82% of the American people got a tax cut, got tax relief because of the momentous 2017 tax cuts. And by the way, let's talk about how effective those tax cuts have been. 2019, so those tax cuts were in 2017, didn't really start to take effect until 2018 and really kicked in by 2019, which was also the last full year that, thank goodness, we were free of the China virus before we were invaded with this terrible virus. And in 2019, what happened? Well, it was the best year in American history for workers, literally. Not my opinion. That's what the numbers tell us. 6.8% wage growth, an all-time U.S. record by a mile. Even better than that, Dan, for the deplorables, for blue-collar people, 9% wage growth. Minorities did better than the average. Everyone did well, okay? Look, we don't want to put people in the silos and only view them that way by identity politics. Everyone did well. The wealthy to the most modest earners. But the point is, the strivers, the economic underdogs, the people who had languished so badly, who lagged behind during the slow growth years that Biden was in the White House, those are the people who leaped to the front because of those tax cuts. And I don't want to just brag about the past. It's happening again right now. For example, and I hope I don't bore you or the audience with my data, but I spent 25 years on Wall Street. So I spent a lot of time watching the numbers. And these numbers lately, they are defying Wall Street expectations, by the way. They're defying all of the skeptics who thought that we could never get this much ground back this quickly. We know we still have work to do. There are still too many people who are out of work right now because of what the Chinese Communist Party did to the world. But we can also rightly celebrate the amazing economic progress right now in this country. And it's particularly due to the open states. I call them the liberty states, places like Florida, which has opened aggressively and smartly. And the economy is absolutely humming. So because of this, for example, manufacturing wages just in September, most recent report, hit a new all-time high. They're up 11% so far. Average hourly earnings for production people, not the managers, production people in manufacturing. That rate, and that's including the pandemic, 11% so far in the Trump presidency. And that rate is 50% better than the last 4 years of Obama-Biden. And I say the last 4 years because I'm trying to be fair here and not cherry pick and penalize them for the 08-09 recession. So my
don't
point
bother.
Is this
they won't be fair to you. That's very nice. You're a noble man. I give them nothing. I screw them. I'm tired of them. But that's very generous. You're a more noble guy than me in that respect. But Steve, doesn't it infuriate? I mean, listen, my listeners hear this every day on my show, on my daily show. The media drives me nuts, but this one thing drives me crazy because it's such a simple question that, I'll be fair for a minute. Biden could clear up right away. Biden could say, hey, I'm not going to repeal the Trump tax cuts because they are tax cuts for the middle class, and I'm just going to hike taxes on the rich with a new bill. You know why he won't say that? Because he'll have to acknowledge to the media that Trump cut taxes for the middle class. That's why he won't answer that question. That's what's like, I want to pull my hair out. Just ask him the damn question. So you're not going to repeal the Trump tax cut. Just say it.
Right. And the media, look, unfortunately, they are all too willing to be complicit in Joe Biden's lies. Let's face it, Joe Biden started his entire campaign on a lie, on I think, the most malicious lie in American public life, which is the Fine People hoax, the lie about Charlottesville, the myth that President Trump praised violent bigots in Charlottesville when in fact he said the exact opposite. He condemned them totally and in explicit terms. So he has been spreading that lie with the media's assistance since the very beginning of his campaign. So unfortunately, if they're willing to spread that lie, that toxic lie that is so divisive and untrue, just totally provably untrue, then of course they're willing to also help him spread lies that probably aren't quite as bad regarding taxes. It's very clear, unfortunately, that we don't really have journalism very much in this country, certainly not in the legacy outlets. We do in platforms like yours, but not in the legacy outlets. They're completely corrupted. They're completely in the tank for Joe Biden. And we see it nowhere more exemplified, unfortunately, than their intent to completely ignore the biggest story of this entire campaign, which is, of course, the revelations about the Biden cartel selling us out to communist China.
Oh, we're going to get to that. I got Rudy Giuliani on this show, too. So you're on with three rock stars. Oh, yeah, you ain't kidding. You're right. Your PragerU video about the hoax, about the Fine People hoax is amazing. And if you have not seen it, just put in a search engine, Steve Cortes, PragerU. Steve eviscerates this ridiculous lie with the actual transcript and footage. It's amazing, Steve. I've used it on my show. You're right. The media is horrible. One of the other things, you're a data guy, I'm a data guy, but really data doesn't resonate with, and it's not people's fault. They've got games to get to, work to go to. They don't want to sit and go through pools of data like we do. One of the things I saw, though, that surpasses any kind of wonkery and just really hit me hard the other day in the Wall Street Journal was this number. Under Donald Trump, we have seen the lowest level of black unemployment since World War II. Forget about data. That's a powerful, powerful piece of information there that really I hadn't even heard. I knew it was good. I didn't know it was that good.
Right. No, it's incredible. In total, let me give you a similar number for Hispanics. I care a lot about these facts, of course, as an Hispanic. Before Donald Trump, there was 1 month ever, because of course payroll reports come out every single month. There was 1 month ever in 2006 where Hispanic jobless rate was below 5%. One ever. Under Donald Trump, there have been 26 of them. I mean, think about that. So the other 44 presidents stacked up 1 month under 5%. Donald Trump, 26 of them. It's amazing what he's done for working class people, whether they're white or brown or black or purple. This is a president who rewards working class people and creates the conditions for them to thrive and succeed. The economic strivers, the deplorables. And by the way, to contrast that with Joe Biden, again, I think this is really important for us as we head here into the home stretch, to contrast it with his record of economic failure. The Biden-Obama years were great for the already successful because you had a lot of asset inflation. So if you already owned a lot of real estate and a lot of stocks, these were salad days for you, Obama and Biden. But workers languished. And to put a statistic on this, only 10%, only the top 10% of earners saw their net worth increase throughout those 8 years. 90% of Americans, that's most of us, folks, saw their net worth decrease over the 8 years. And it was even worse for Black Americans. Blacks saw, on average, a 30% reduction in their household net worth under the leadership of the first Black president. So think about that. While it was certainly a real symbolic victory for America to elect a Black man, and it was, by the way, for our country, to prove that we are no longer a racist nation, that was quite an achievement. However, what did he do once given the levers of power and once given control of policy? Unfortunately, all he did was delivered for credentialed elites on the coast, ignoring workers, including a lot of Black and brown people.
So, Steve, another data point fact that really blew my mind without getting too wonky here is they just did one of these real simple polls. Hey, is your life better off now than it was 4 years ago? The traditional question that everybody always celebrates if you're doing well and you get over 50%. We're in the middle of a pandemic. President Trump scored 54%. Think about this. The process is for a minute.
Right.
We're in the middle of one of the worst pandemics in modern history. And it was so bad at the end of the Obama administration that even now, 54% of people are like, no, I trust President Trump more than the Obama-Biden people.
Right. It's astounding. And it shows you, I think, a couple things. Number one is what kind of strength we came into the pandemic with. So thank goodness, right, that this country was humming economically on all cylinders. So while what has happened and the challenges that we faced have been terrible for this country, it's caused a lot of real misery out there, particularly economically, health-wise, of course, as well. But the good news is Donald Trump had us coming into the storm in such a position of strength that Americans still report, even with the challenges of 2020, that the solid majority are better off than 4 years ago. Also, to put that number in context, I think this is important because they've been polling on it. You know, Reagan used that line largely to win as a challenger in 1980. So from 1984 on, Gallup has done this poll every election year. And of sitting incumbent U.S. presidents, nobody's ever been north of 50. The high watermark previously was Bill Clinton in 1996 when the economy was really rocking, and he got to 50. So not only is this a terrific number and a terrific affirmation of President Trump as the prosperity president, but it's also a standout number compared to historical norms.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Really, it really is. It's a stunning number. We had Robert Cahaly on from the Trafalgar Group, one of the few polling outlets that actually called 2016. Everyone else, of course, was all over the map and wrong about President Trump. He thinks that President Trump could get 15, possibly more, 15 to 20% of the black vote, which would be a historic in modern times accomplishment by a GOP candidate. Are you guys feeling the love out there from the black community? I'll tell you, I am. I got a lot of listeners who happen to be black and Hispanic, and I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, listen, I think blacks and Hispanics, number one, they're tired of the Democratic Party taking them for granted. Number two, this is not your parents or grandparents' Democratic Party. So a lot of traditionally minded blacks and Hispanics, and I'll speak for Hispanics, listen, I think that we are generally a very conservative people, politically, religiously, and culturally. And so a lot of Democrats, a lot of Hispanics who used to vote Democratic, but have traditional minded values, sort of traditional, religious blue collar type values, they have found themselves effectively politically orphaned by the 2020 Democratic Party as it lurches leftward and as it embraces the terrible policies of the so-called squad. I think the same thing is happening among a lot of black Americans, a lot of black men. One thing we're seeing in internal polling is black men are really starting to trend our way. And I think it's primarily, whether it's black men, Hispanic men, white men, primarily, particularly younger ones, it's the aspirational aspect of their life that they want to build wealth. They want to make money. They look at Donald Trump as a man who did it himself in his private life and is now, as a public servant, creating the conditions for others to do it. And look, I don't like to put too much stock in celebrities, but I do think that people like 50 Cent coming over and saying, I don't want to be 20 Cent, I think that resonates.
He didn't want to be 20 Cent, he said, which was brilliant. Right. He's like, I don't want to be 20 Cent, cut my wealth in half. What's funny? When even Cardi B, who has endorsed Bernie Sanders and all kind of leftist nuts and says crazy stuff, put out a video a while ago when she actually looked at the Democrats' tax plan. I don't know if you remember this. She was like, why am I giving you all my taxes? Which is like, I don't get it. Then how are you not voting Donald Trump? Listen, I know we're short on time. I just want to get, if I can, two more quick things in. One on this obvious disaster with Hunter Biden. Listen, I get it. I've had addiction in my family. It's a horrible thing. And I certainly don't mean to pile on. But that's not an excuse, Steve. I mean, the man's father, who he clearly was involved in a business relationship with, according to people involved with them, is running for president. These are fair questions. It appears right now to me, and this is not hyperbole, that Joe Biden is a national security risk to the United States. I mean, normal common sense people, after seeing this bevy of information that have come out, have to ask themselves, what else do the communist Chinese, who appear to have been in a business relationship with them, have on the Biden family? This is serious stuff.
Oh, it's absolutely deadly serious. You're right. And you're also right. There's a phrase that there's never one cockroach. And I think that's probably true. Just what we know is so damning. Think about what we potentially don't know. And listen, I'm really pushing in our campaign is trying to frame this as we're not really concerned with Hunter Biden. OK, he has his issues. He has dealt with addiction like millions of Americans. He's lived largely a depraved life. None of that matters to the voters, though. That's not relevant. He's not on the ballot. Joe Biden is. And here's the reality. Hunter Biden was just a bag man, okay, for the Biden cartel. The head of the cartel is Joe Biden. And what we now know, we previously had been able to factually ascertain that Joe Biden had awareness of his son's nefarious and corrupt business dealings all over the world, including with the two most dangerous enemies of the United States, Russia and China. But what we now know, because of this bombshell report from the New York Post, and because of the surfacing and the effective public testimony of Bob Alinsky, who I believe is really a patriot and doing the honorable thing here, he has come forward on the record as the CEO of the sham company that was set up to facilitate the grift, the passage of many millions of dollars from the Chinese Communist Party through a Chinese energy company directly to the Biden family. He has come forward to validate what already unnamed sources had already said, which is that Biden is the, quote, big guy. He's the big guy in the emails, the explosive email stating that he gets a 10% cut of this scam. And this isn't your standard grift, Dan. I think this is important to point out. We're not talking about a Canadian telecom company who wants some influence for an FCC license in Washington, D.C. Okay, that would be bad enough. We're talking about the most dire enemy of the United States, the Chinese Communist Party. And they were able to buy access and influence with the second most powerful man in the world, who could potentially become the most powerful man in the world. Joe Biden is disqualified from ever being our commander in chief. With just what we know right now, Dan, he would be unable to get a security clearance to even work at the lowest level in the Pentagon or in the CIA.
He couldn't be a Secret Service agent. He would. I was a recruiter in the Secret Service. He'd be disqualified immediately. Exit question. I know you got to run. We're talking to Steve Cortes, a spokesman for the Trump campaign. Steve, how's your get out the vote effort going? Listen, it's a turnout. This is a base election. How's turnout looking?
No, listen, it's great because we've been investing in that as a campaign for months and actually for years. So the Biden campaign has a top-down strategy. They raise tons of money from powerful interests, which doesn't surprise me, Hollywood, Wall Street, oligarchs. and they're spending it top down, meaning they're spending it primarily on TV advertising. We are a bottom-up movement of the deplorables out there. We've got grassroots enthusiasm like you can't believe. I'll just give one quick last example for the audience out there. I have yet to see a single Biden flag, and I've traveled a lot around this country. I have seen Trump flags in front of middle-class homes, behind pickup trucks going to work sites, behind luxury yachts. I've seen Trump flags everywhere. I have not yet seen a Biden flag.
Yeah, no kidding. I've seen him on planes, trains, and automobiles. Steve Cortes, you never disappoint again. You really made our show terrific. Thank you for making a terrific closing argument why the Trump prosperity agenda is the way forward. You're the best, buddy. Thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. God bless you.
You just heard Dan Bongino.